Russia's advance on Ukraine's capital, Kyiv, appears to have stalled for the moment. According to US officials, it's believed that 80% of Russia's combat power that was assembled along the border is now in the country. President Putin mobilized 190,000 troops, according to estimates. Ukraine has 209,000 active duty soldiers, and last week President Zelensky activated thousands more reservists to support them. Glen Howard is the president of the Jamestown Foundation and co-editor of Russia's Military Strategy and Doctrine. He joins us now live from Washington, D.C. Good to have you with us, sir. It's clear that Russia has stepped up its offensive on Ukraine, on its major cities in the past few hours. What do you think Russia's strategy is now? Has it changed?
Well, I think the strategy so far has been, they've been miscalculating how they plan this war, and execution by the Russians has been faulty at best. The Ukrainians' military strategy has not been to confront them at the borders, but to draw them deeper into the country and to allow them to get closer to the capital city. That appears to be a deliberate strategy. They're having great success with the British-made anti-tank weapons, the in-laws. That were supplied. They have over 1,000 javelins. And what the Ukrainian artillery has been doing has been taking out some very devastating attacks on Russian tank columns. And right now we're seeing the Russian military has it's this gigantic column that has entered the country is now stalled because they're lacking ammunition, or they're lacking fuel, and they're also lacking food. And there's also the issue of the weather conditions in deep, deep mud on the side of the roads, which is forcing the Russians to stay limited to these roads, and that's providing a perfect kill zone for Ukrainian artillery. The city is not encircled yet. There's still open areas for Kyiv on the southwest and southeast side. So the Russians are only on the northwest and northeast side of the city.
But with overwhelming force at Russia's disposal, surely it's only a matter of time before Kyiv is encircled, before it's taken, or do you disagree?
No, I would strongly disagree. What we're seeing is a replication of Grozny in 1995. The Ukrainians have handed out enough weapons. They are well supplied by the British short-range anti-tank weapons. So they deliberately want to lure them into the cities. They're well prepared, and the Russians, every time, in every instance we've seen so far in this war, anytime they got involved in intense combat in suburbs, they retreat. They just don't seem to have the stomach for the war, and they seem to be the morale seems to be plummeting among some of the Russian soldiers. There's reports of them puncturing their gas tanks, not allowing things to progress in a way. And Russian troops would need 1 million men to occupy Ukraine, and they don't have those type of numbers now. And Ukrainians now have the supply lines that are now flowing into the country from Poland. There's 4 NATO member states border Ukraine. Unlike Chechnya in, say, the 1990s, NATO has supply lines, and there's areas where they can get weapons. Even Sweden is providing over 5,000 anti-tank weapons to Ukraine.
So how do you think this will play out? I mean, given that Russia still has superior air power.
They have it, but they haven't really used it. And it's a great mystery as to why they've been reluctant to use that air power. And so there's different theories on that. One is that the Ukrainian air defense has been pretty good, and they have suffered a lot of losses in the air. And so they seem to be reluctant to engage. And there's some element of dysfunction within the Russian military that Western military experts are puzzled by. And all one can say is that this campaign has not been executed. It hasn't been a blitzkrieg for the Russians. Things are slowed down, and every time they try to enter big, large cities, they encounter lots of problems. Now, you're right about the South. They seem to have lost Berdyansk, and now they may have occupied Kherson. But Mariupol is a 500,000 population, and they have stiff resistance there. Some of the best Ukrainian military units are there. And yesterday, there's a report that the Ukrainians seized Horlivka in Donbass. And if that report is true, then that shows that Russian forces have so overextended themselves that are leaving areas of the country that are unopposed.
And if Russia's campaign is not going according to plan for whatever reason at the moment, and they are sustaining as many casualties as you reckon they are, how will that play out, do you think, politically back home in Russia?
I think that there is growing opposition to the war. I don't see that as changing Putin's mind. There seems to be an element of dissent within the Russian general staff that is it's obscure, but it seems to be there, that they don't like the way this war is going. The idea of killing fellow Slavs and Ukrainians is not popular among a lot of Russians. And so as the body counts continue and they suffer losses, I can see the pressure mounting. And you and I are both old enough to remember Sarajevo and what happened, and there will be mounting pressure on the West and the United States and NATO to do something if they suffer a lot of casualties. But we're not at that stage yet. And again, if there's determined resistance by the Ukrainians in the cities, and so far their morale is really high, and many of these British-made anti-tank weapons are now in Kharkiv, all over the country, and they're basically prepared and ready to keep fighting. And so this is going to be a war of days, maybe not weeks, certainly not a month. But if the casualties keep continuing for the Russians, there's going to reach a point where they're going to have to call it quits.
Good to talk to you, Glenn. Many thanks indeed. Glen Howard there in Washington.
Thank you.